left. Tom, you're up next.
Well, thank you. And just as a kind of a quick historical note, I see Elizabeth Haygood here, and Dana, you're hiding somewhere. But in a previous life, we shared a cell together when we worked for a couple of years with Mark Sanford on a South Carolina climate action planning process. And it was one of, I think, 22 that we formally convened and conducted with governors across the United States, and involved over 2,000 stakeholders. We've done that work at a sub-state level and a regional level here in the United States, and we're replicating that work today in the provinces of China, the border states of Mexico, et cetera. So I'll have a little bit to say about that in a minute, but it's good to be back and good to see you again. And I would like to take this opportunity to flash my Southern credentials. So I was born in Waynesboro, Virginia, in the Valley. I went south to William and Mary to go to college, then on to North Carolina to graduate school, and then to Arkansas, where I worked for 5 years, including a stint as a division director for the State Conservation Agency, and then on to Austin, Texas to get yet another graduate degree before I circled back to Washington. And when I was in Arkansas and I was about to leave, I was doing a luncheon program with one of the civic groups. We used to call that the Rubber Chicken Circuit. And I think the word had kind of gotten out that I was moving on, and one of the old timers in the crowd, asked me where I'd come from and where I was headed next and all that, and I recounted it, and he said, it reminds me of a young man I once knew. He grew up in Virginia, he went to North Carolina, he got a great education, he moved to Arkansas, met a beautiful woman, had a family, led a wonderful life, whereupon he moved to Texas, where he died and went to hell. And I said, that's awful, how did that happen? He said, well, the change was so gradual, I couldn't tell the difference. So, living in the South is unique, but not necessarily as unique as everybody might think. So yes, I quit soccer, and I quit swimming after 4 years straight being #1 in the region, and I quit piano, and I quit my job in Arkansas after being the youngest division director in the United States. And the truth is, I've quit a lot of things too soon. And maybe part of what I have to say today is, I think we have to be very careful about turning our backs on success and quitting too soon. Because the reality is, we have succeeded to a much greater degree than we realize in addressing this problem of climate change. And there's a lot more where that comes from. And so I'd like to talk a little bit today specifically about what that means. And a couple of things that I'd like to kind of get out there as we start is, the processes that we've done across the country are essentially applied democracy. But part of the reality of democracy is that it challenges the leadership network. And democracy is not like a cafeteria where you go in and you take the things that appeal to you and you leave the rest behind. You have to deal with the whole thing. It's a difficult process, and frankly, in every single one of the processes that I have helped create and lead, they have been sabotaged at the beginning, the middle, or the end, or all three combined. It's tough to keep the wheels on the wagon, but if you do, it works. And Mayor Nichols, I think, is to be really applauded for serving this incredibly important role that a convener plays in stepping forward to make these processes a reality and to keep the wheels on the wagon, because it takes a while for them to get to the finish line. And I'm proud to say that, unlike her old man, my daughter is actually sticking with things and not giving up so soon. So maybe there is hope in those who follow that they can do better than we have. And knock on wood, she's swimming again for her 4th year. She's still playing the violin, and you name it. So that's a great joy. There is a lot of evidence to point to that we've made progress, and there is a lot more where that came from. It is a myth that we haven't succeeded and that we can't, but it's a myth that's held widely in the United States by all political opinion segments, and it's one of the major barriers to personal engagement. We've done a paper recently on our website that was published at the International Energy Workshop, for instance, that rounds up all this action that's happened at the subnational level in the United States, translates into the impact it's had on forecasted carbon dioxide emissions, along with the economy and natural gas, and identifies additional things that came out of these collective processes. It really isolates a set of top actions in every sector that are capable of simultaneously getting energy, economy, and environment on the same page in a net positive way. You know, you can have your cake and eat it too. It's really hard work, but you can do it. And that's a part of a worldwide paradigm that is established and growing, and it goes by lots of different names. Some folks call it E3, energy, environment, economic security simultaneously. There's low emissions development. There's low carbon development. There's green growth. There's applied democracy. There's community collaboration, alternative dispute resolution, a lot of things that are all about people working together to do effective things. And some people call that, by the way, common sense. But there are some pretty important ingredients behind what it takes to make that work. And let me just comment on a couple here. First, it takes a convening authority. Mayor Nichols, again, would be an excellent example at the local government level of somebody who occupied that role. Mark Sanford would be an example here in South Carolina as a governor. When I created the Center for Climate Strategies, it was really deliberately designed to work through the convening authorities of state and local officials, but particularly state officials, to build a consensus outside of the Beltway that could effectively be translated into national action where needed, as well as state and local action back home. But somebody has to play that role of being the convening authority. One of the big issues I think we face today is that our current roster of governors don't seem to be as willing to do that as the past roster was. And we're either going to have to find somebody else or get these folks back on track in a way, and I think that requires some new thinking. We also need to have a base of community support. There has to be a critical mass of folks that will go to leaders and say, we really want this to happen. This is a critical issue that needs to be addressed. We want to sort it out, and we're all willing to give a bit to make that happen, but we want to work with you. And they have to be people that the convening authorities will listen to. They also have to operate under the right goals. It's not enough to deal with the climate issue. The reality has always been you have to deal with energy, economy, equity, all at the same time. And that immediately gets you into complexity of technique. You have to, be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. You have to be able to simultaneously solve a bunch of problems at the same time. It turns out people are really, really good at doing this if they're given the right information and process. People are capable of, we call this a lot of different things. One of the things is multi-attribute screening and optimization and all that. Basically, this is the way products are designed in our private sector. When I was in business school, I spent a lot of time in marketing research, and there are tools by which we enable people to do this and allow the translation of that into things that we want to buy, things that we want to vote for, and we can do that in policy, but it takes some technique and it takes some support. People also need a full range of choices. When we've conducted these processes, the starting place has been not that there's nothing we can do, it's the observation that there are hundreds of things that are already being done that actually work. They may not be in place specifically to address emissions reduction. That may be a side benefit of them, but the reality is we're already doing so many things that work, and there are more we can do. So we establish a full range of choice, and then the creative ability to expand it, to do new things, to innovate where we don't have enough choices on the table. And this is a fundamental part of the innovation process. Another really fundamental part of the innovation process is the ability to take things back to the drawing board. Nobody worldwide does this like the United States of America. We do it in the private sector and we do it in the public sector. When things don't work the first time, we don't give up. We go back to the drawing board, we take it apart, and we put it back together again to make it work right. And we keep doing it until we get it right. And that's how we are reshoring manufacturing. We're working intensively in China. A lot of manufacturing from China is coming back home through that exact process. So it really does work. It also takes time. Back in the 60s, IBM learned that it took on average 18 months to complete a conceptual sales a conceptual sale of a piece of office equipment, because you have to change the concept of how the office is run. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. People take a while to shift concept. We've got to be in this for the long haul, and we've got to sustain enough period of time for people to move through a period of conceptual change. It is unreasonable to expect people on issues that are complex and high stakes, like policy, to behave as if this is an impulse purchase decision for a Bic pen or something like that. That's not how it works. So it takes time. And I think that it also takes a recognition and a respect within groups for the views of others. And I think perhaps we all have something to learn from this. But one of the difficulties that we experience in policy repeatedly is people come to the table wanting what they want and not really interested in hearing what other people want, or presuming that they know the right answer and that people who disagree with them are somehow or another either wrong or should be demonized for disagreeing. So I teach graduate school in a couple of different programs. One of the exercises we use to warm students up to the diversity of perspectives that exist, whether we realize it or not, as we play a round or two of Boggle. For those of you who haven't played Boggle, it's a scramble of letters. You look at it and you pull out of that 3-letter words or 4-letter words and write them on a piece of paper. And no matter what group of people you pick, they all see different things in that same batch of letters. No matter how much we think we know and that we can see the whole thing, none of us sees more than just a piece. The issue is bigger than all of us combined. It takes all of us together to get the most out of that scramble of letters. And so effective public policy process does exactly that. So I'm out of time, and I guess what I would sum by saying is that a good friend of mine who was representing Governor Pawlenty a couple of years ago told me in 2008 or so, he says, if the recession comes along, this issue is toast. And I really think this issue has been hurt tremendously by the recession, but really in an indirect way. People got afraid. Somewhere along the line, the things we were doing that really worked stopped happening. Somebody told us to stop, or we just decided on our own to stop doing the things that really work. We did a lot of things that really did work. We have tremendous evidence that they have restructured our energy systems substantially in this country. We have evidence that they are being decoupled from our economic systems, which is precisely where we want to go in the future. I think there's a lot more we can do to put that back on track, but I think we're going to have to update and re-engineer around it. And perhaps the most crucial thing we need to do going forward is find that convening authority, find that person or set of people in a position of sufficient authority that we can begin organizing collective processes around them again. And if the governors can't do that, then I think it's time that we find somebody else. We know the formula works. We just need to get this train back in motion again. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. You know, I saw a quote this weekend of Thomas Edison I had never seen. Some of you may have heard it. And it was, vision without execution is hallucination. And it goes to some of your comments. It's great to have wonderful vision, but if you can't execute and put it in place, it's of no consequence.